Hi, welcome to the tour of the Intro Psych MOOC. It's the Mixably Open online course. And what we're trying to do here is to create a course that is not focused necessarily on being massive, although it is designed in such a way that you could run it with a lot of students, a lot of use of peer instruction, that sort of thing. But it's primarily designed to be reusable. Particularly in institutional contexts, which is an area that I think has been relatively ignored by the major providers of these so-called massive open online courses. So let's take a look at what's in here. Let's start with this. Everything in here you can download in an IMS common cartridge. Import it into Canvas. It'll look exactly like this. Import it into something else. It might look a little different, but the idea it is in a common cartridge format that you can take and use elsewhere. Once you actually have it exported, you can actually do anything you want. You change the order of things, delete things, move things around. That's one way of reusing this, is just to take it, do it somewhere else. We don't care what you do something awesome with it, and hopefully let us know. But do it in your corner of the world, on your server, on another part of the Canvas server. Take it, run with it, get it done. That's one way of reusing it here, and it's probably the simplest way, and the way that a lot of people might want to use this, because it allows this ultimate customizability. You start with, let me show you how big this is, right? We have spec'd out, and this includes deadlines, okay, grading criteria. This is material for a full Intro Psych course. It includes videos, online readings, everything you need to run an Intro to Psych course. Reading response prompts, discussion questions, the whole bit. So we're getting towards the end of the course here. Yeah, here's the final module. You can do this, so you can do this right down to the final reading response item here. So you can do this, right? You can take this and just start with this as your frame. Imagine if you're teaching an Intro Psych course, and to start out, you actually import this. It's got your textbook in it. It's got all your video lectures in it. It's got your reading response questions. Then you go and you add the awesome pieces that are going to make this really sing. So that's one way of reusing it, and I think it's a completely viable way to go about it. We'll talk about another way involving the use of additional sections in a minute. So the way it's structured is around modules. These modules have a time estimation of student effort. It's articulated as a range, with 2 hours being really what you would expect a moderately successful student to do. This upper part of the range being what students might want to schedule, especially if they're students that maybe struggle with the course. But the idea here is that as you integrate these modules into your classroom, you understand what the time commitment of these modules is, so that you understand what you have to move around in your own schedule. And that's just a very small element of the mixability of the course. But mixability, I think, is very often an issue of some of these small things, where if I'm going to integrate this into my course, I need to understand what sort of additional time commitment I'm requesting of the students to do that effectively. And I don't necessarily have the time to sit there and sit with a stopwatch and do all the readings and figure out what additional reading requirement I'm imposing on the students using these modules. Okay, let's move on. And I've been talking about the modules. Let's look at what the structure of a module is. We use two major open educational resources in the construction of this. The first is the Flat World Knowledge textbook, Intro Psych textbook by Charles Stanger. And we borrow actually a lot of the learning objectives for each module from the Stanger book, as well as most of the readings. So if we look here, we'll see that most of these are from the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. explain, describe, explain, list, outline. But it's an introductory psych course. This is sort of what you expect. You want the students to really gain a broad knowledge of what's out there, a broad knowledge of some of the terminology, the concepts, and so forth. And then hopefully in whatever you're doing outside of this framework, that is where some of the application, that is where some of the critique, some of the analysis is going on, right? So you're as a teacher, you're providing some of those upper rungs there on the Bloom's taxonomy. Now, that's not to say that we don't supply those. I'll come back to the reading response piece, which actually does ask for the application of some of these things from the students. But that's to say that one of the main the main focus of this piece is that we do at least cover those sort of entry-level concepts. So as we look down here, we see we've got the learning objectives, we've got the readings, and the readings we've actually taken, and we've actually taken them out of the textbook and dropped them in Canvas so that the students can actually, if they want, they can read them in Canvas. If not, they can download the textbook from Flat World Knowledge, or download or buy the Flat World Knowledge license that gives them the study notes and those sorts of things as well, which is actually a pretty good deal for students, and one reason why I think the Flat World will, despite their recent issues, I think they'll understand what a benefit it is that people would be using these materials to them and to their business model. If we look at this, we'll see that we've tweaked it so that it's really displayable in Canvas. So we've put a lot of work in here actually to reformat this and make this readable in this format, in this context. But it's worth it. It's worth it because it's there. The students don't have to buy an extra text if they don't want. The students panel through it. It's set up as a module, so everything's sequenced, and the sequences are meant to reinforce the learning objectives and to some extent scaffold them. So we can move through these readings. I'm being the fastest speed reader ever here. Move through these readings. One of the neat pieces of this is, since this is all open, we can take the text and we can actually use text-to-speech to output the text as an MP3, essentially an audiobook read by a computer, but an audiobook read by a computer where students can use this in the car, on the treadmill, walking across campus to either initially do the reading or perhaps to review the reading before a test. And you'll see.
Chapter 1, Introducing Psychology. Psychology is the scientific study of mind and behavior. The word psychology comes from the Greek word psyche.
This is part of the idea, part of the place where we get that time commitment. We understand it's about 70 minutes for the computer voice to read this. And while you and I probably read significantly faster than we would read out loud, what I found is most of my students don't read all that much faster than they read out loud at Keene State. That's the demographic we serve. So we've estimated the reading time that they should set aside for the first pass at that reading at about 70 minutes. Now, what you'll notice is we've put in the dates here. The dates, the way Canvas structures dates, you can take these dates and just have a different start date, and they'll panel out over, they'll expand over the whatever the week or time frame that you're trying to set up is. But putting in those initial dates gives you some sort of framework for understanding how fast students might be expected to move through this material. Now, when we actually look at the module, we'll see that we have the readings. Students go through the readings. Students answer some questions on the readings, although we don't have all those questions structured in here yet. And then the students use the second major open piece of the course, where we've pulled video lectures from Paul Bloom down at Yale at the Open Yale Courses project, has a series of very good lectures on for his intro to psych class, and we've paired up the lectures with the portion of the Stanger text. So we're taking these two materials and we're sewing them together. This is really what the possibility of open educational resources was supposed to be about, is that we could take multiple resources and start integrating them into much larger frameworks over time, so that you didn't, if you were teaching a course, you didn't have to be the integrator. Someone could do the integration for you. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be your integrator, right? So if we look here at the Paul Bloom video, we'll see Paul Bloom talking. He's talking about his course, of course.
So this course will be wide-ranging in that sense.
We have the closed captioning here, by the way.
At this point, I've been speaking in generalities. So I want to close this introductory class by giving 5 examples.
Okay, and he's going to talk through his 5 examples here of sorts of subjects you're going to cover. And then you're going to, we've broken up these larger Yale courses videos that are like about an hour long into smaller 10-minute, 12-minute pieces. And you're going to get that same sort of content rehearsal, example rehearsal question at the end of this. So here we ask about Phineas Gage, which is an example that Paul is using, and that most psych books actually do use, to talk about this question of the brain as really being this physical organ that produces personality, and the physicality not really being separable from these more abstract qualities of personality, right? I'll try not to get in the cul-de-sac of talking about the psych piece of this, which is, I think, really fascinating. We have this thing called threads in it, which I'll talk about later, but this behavioral genetics piece is a thread. And then we have this, as we go through here, let's go to the modules, actually. We have a reading response that is has a series of prompts here that are used to reinforce the learning objectives. And we can certainly see where students might write their own prompts and so forth. These are prompts so that they could use. And it's set up so that they can do this on a blog post, or they can submit it via text box, depending on what your particular class, how your particular class wants to use this. They can be on the open web, or they can be behind sort of the wall of the LMS. I mean, we let you make that decision as an instructor for this, but we give you some of the prompts, and the prompts are I think in this particular case are pulled from Stanger. And then there's a discussion question, right? And the discussion question again, I think, pulled from Stanger. Some of these we wrote from scratch, but this one I believe is pulled from Stanger. And the discussion question reinforces this. Now I'm going to talk in the future videos about the ways that you can take this and you can have a wide variety of different courses can be served by the same module structure, in particular through the use of this thing that we're calling threading that you see partially here with this behavioral genetics piece. And I think that's one of the really interesting pieces of it. But the first thing I want you to see is, if you imagine this amount of work and this amount of content and this amount of assessment and activities structured all in an LMS across an entire semester, again, to show you the amount of stuff that we have in here covered, each in this granular fashion. If you can imagine just starting with this, right? You just start with this. This is the big promise, right? This is the thing that was supposed to happen but never really seemed to happen, is that all these little tiny pieces that you're running around to get would eventually create this larger architecture where you could sit down and you could start with something that was already fairly fully formed, and then move it around a bit. Like pick out the pieces that work for you and the pieces that don't, and find your way to customize it to your particular course. But you start really with a course that's already fully formed and it has maybe a level of structure that would be very difficult for you to find the time to provide yourself. I mean, the amount of time that I've spent in this, I don't even want to talk about. It depresses me, depresses my wife, depresses my kids. I've been a little obsessive about it. But the idea is we do it once, and then you get to start from there and change it into the thing you want. So I'm going to talk about the mixable elements next, but I want to give you, this has been an overview of the module structure, and we'll get to the mixable part next time.